All right, so I believe we are live now. If you guys can just let me know if you can hear me and see me, that would be great. Nice to see all of you. Hey, you say Booyan, Voonmin Dang, Lapper's Delivery, Basic Trainer, Nathan Gardner, Dan Roth, Mitch. Nice to see all of you. Hello, Aiden. So once I get, if you guys can just let me know if you can hear me. Once I get the all good, we can jump into a few just updates, channel updates, and then we will get right into questions. We have a lot of Patreon questions this week. Okay, looks and sounds good. Awesome. All right, so yeah, if you can just let me know. Hopefully we don't get any dropped frame rates this week. I know we've been having issues the last few weeks. Internet looks strong, so hopefully everything will be smooth today. So first things first, I just want to say a big thank you to all of the new Patreon supporters. We're over 100 Patreon supporters now. Last time I checked, which is amazing. I've decided that starting next month, we will be switching and changing the Patreon, and everyone who supports the Patreon, we have that consulting tier, but then we have the normal tier, which is going to be access to this private Q&A conversation we're going to be having. We're actually going to do the first one on Zoom. That's what we've decided. And so it's going to be, I have lots of different plans and ideas. Rafi is going to be helping moderate things. I want to do monthly topics where we plan on doing a certain topic where we bring questions to ask you guys, where it's a real conversation and not just a one-sided thing. There are questions all around. I want it to be a place where people can get to meet each other, network, build connections, build relationships. I want to do breakout rooms eventually where we can give you guys discussion topics and different things to talk about and think about. I want to really do something that hasn't been done so much in the Pokemon community, which is have sort of this monthly online virtual convention of sorts. I'm going to bring other people in eventually to maybe give talks on certain things, and then we can do breakout rooms and discuss those points, all those sorts of things. We're just going to have to see how all of it goes, how much you guys enjoy it. We're probably going to start pretty bare bones, just kind of getting comfortable with using Zoom. For people who are interested in that, you can sign up for the Patreon to be involved in that. It will be, it's $10 charged monthly, the first of every month. I would wait probably at this point. I would definitely wait until the first of next month probably to join, unless you feel like supporting us with an extra $10, because Patreon will charge you on the first of every month. In case you haven't used Patreon before, I just want to make sure people realize that. And as far as having to engage on Zoom and that sort of thing, you definitely will never have to. You certainly don't have to turn your camera on. You can mute yourself, turn your camera off, and you'll never be called on to talk or to answer something that you don't want to. So definitely no reason to be anxious at all. You can be a complete fly on the wall. But I know we have a lot of people in this chat and in the community who do want to engage, who do want to talk. And I think that it'll just be a better benefit for everyone. So we'll just kind of feel it out, see how all of that goes. Okay. So that's going to be the plan for that. So if you're interested in that, sign up for probably the next month. Okay. Let's see what else we got here for agenda notes. I am starting another channel with a couple of guys. That's the other note, where we're going to be doing a weekly podcast. It's going to be more of a podcast format. We're also going to try and have it on. You guys have been asking me to do a podcast for a long time, where you can get it in a non-YouTube form. So we're probably going to try and eventually get that podcast, I don't know, on Spotify, iTunes, whatever people do, whatever's the easiest places to listen to it. And it's just going to be a weekly podcast. A lot of it will be about Pokemon, but it's going to also be more broad about TCG collecting in general, investing and collecting. We're going to talk a lot about economics, and it's with the guys from the Collect and Spec podcast. Great podcast. Rainy Day Collectibles, Wolf of Tin Street, two guys who have been engaged in the community for a long time. I think that'll be a great fit for the type of content we do here, and just like something enjoyable for people to be able to listen to, on their way to work, while they're working, people on long drives, before bed, that sort of thing. That's when I listen to a lot of podcasts. And I listen to a lot of card podcasts myself and other sorts of podcasts. So I think there are a lot of people just basically very similar to me who will watch this channel and are interested in this type of content. So hopefully they'll get some value for that. And that will be, completely free, just sort of an additional thing I want to offer, additional content just for free for the community to enjoy. What else do we got going on? As far as this channel will keep going the exact same way, minus one live a week, and that one live I'm going to be spending on the Patreon. So we're going to see how that goes, how that workload goes for me. If it's too much work with this other podcast, we may do a little bit less of these live Q&As and transition that to that podcast, some of which we may make live, and we can do some Q&A format there. So we're just going to have to feel that out in terms of like that workload and my ability to kind of handle all of that, as well as other people's schedules that I'm working with. But I'm still going to try and make some of those shorter videos for this channel. Whenever I feel like there's a video on a topic that might be interesting, I will try and make it. I'm probably not going to make... there's so many videos on like the latest thing that I don't make because I'm just not that interested in the topic, and I feel like those videos are already out there. I try not to repeat what I'm seeing other PokeTubers say, so I'm really going to try to not make those unless there's something that I feel like would be valuable to add to the conversation. So that's my goal, because it's just not my passion to make those, and I don't really enjoy it too much. All right. So as people are filing in here, thank you all for joining me today. Nice to see you guys. So let's jump into some Patreon questions. We got a lot of Patreon questions today. Okay, first one. Question: how can I accurately determine if a card is rare and not just low pop due to the low need for grading in the past? There are many EX series Holo PSA 10s in both English and more so in Japanese that are very low pop but still at a decent price. Absolutely. So the short answer is there is no way to know how much is out there. I think a lot of that comes from experience. I should say being able to make probably better than average educated guesses on how much of their might be left out there mint that could get 10. I think that it comes from buying lots of collections over the years, being engaged in the community, knowing a little bit about some of these more secret collections of large ungraded mint cards, which there are still those left. Those eras and those periods just don't seem to have a lot of cards. I'm tracking the analytics on how many cards are being graded like a week from a lot of those sets, and we're talking like 6, 7, 8, 9 a week, and not PSA 10s, just in general from a lot of those sets, where if we look at like Jungle, Fossil, base set, we're seeing hundreds and hundreds a week right now. So there's a huge discrepancy in terms of how many of those are being graded compared to even just the amount of continued WotC that's graded. Now, the first edition WotC holos, though, in PSA 10, those are really starting to not be as many added, outside of the commons and uncommons and unlimited. But when you look at those analytics, you combine those analytics combined with just my experience in the hobby, buying and selling, looking at lots and lots of collections, making a lot of connections and talking to people, getting a sense of what's out there, what they have in their collections, you can kind of get a feel for that those sets just don't have that much, mint stuff out there. And the stuff that is out there, a lot of it isn't going to be graded because it's in a lot of people's binder collections. It's in a lot of collectors' hands, and they really like the cards. So, that being said, those numbers are certainly going to go up because those populations are so low, some of them. Like, don't be surprised at all if those populations triple, quadruple, even 5x in the next few years. But that's like going from 10 to 50. So that's not that much, okay? Only 50 of a specific card in the world. When we think of value, the most important ones are going to be the first appearance cards of Pokemon. The cooler arts, that's going to be subjective. The cooler Pokemon is going to be subjective, but generally we have a sense of what Pokemon tend to are the most popular and sell for the most. I think like the first set or the first couple sets are a bit underrated with some of those holos. So lots of potentially underrated stuff in there. We're going to have to see how that does over time as compared to WotC. Even if it's more, the supply side is better and they seem to be rarer items, the demand may never be there in the long run quite as much as WotC, even though I think that there's going to be a lot of demand for that, particularly I think over time, people are going to want that original Nintendo era. They're going to be like Nintendo Pokemon collectors. Maybe they're not even Wizards of the Coast collectors. They're just like non-Wizards of the Coast collectors, and that first era is going to be that era. And maybe that will be a niche and where some of those gold stars and EX cards and even just the gorgeous regular holos, gorgeous reverse holos become very desirable. Okay. But yeah, you make a great point here, which is just that low pop doesn't mean that it's always going to be low pop. A lot of the times there's a low pop of something because it never had any value, so people didn't grade it. Okay, so you always have to be very careful about that, and we'll know a lot more in 3-4 years how much of this stuff is really out there. Outside of that, it's sort of an educated guessing game. In terms of the Japanese side, again, similar guessing game. I don't see that much of it. I've graded a decent amount of it. I actually own a decent portion of it. I still have some. I have some out at PSA right now. I was picking those cards up for really cheap and grading them because I think they're really, really cool arts. I think it's cool to have in Japanese, and it was very affordable. I don't think a lot of people were doing that, so I do think we're going to see more of those come out. Japanese was definitely less desirable. There was barely any market at all for even the English side for like the regular holos and reverse holos from those sets, let alone a market for the Japanese regular holos and reverse holos. There wasn't even that strong of a market for a while for the gold star Japanese cards. They were going for $100, $200, $300 at the most in PSA 10, even some of the more expensive ones. So as that market has really built up, the EX cards have built up, now you're going to see those Japanese holos gain some value as well. That's generally how it goes with those 3 tiers from that original Nintendo EX era. Okay, great questions. Second point here. Looking at and when you ask a question like that, I know you're thinking the right way about it, right? That is the important question, and at the end of the day, nobody knows exactly, but you can make good educated guesses. And so far as I think we can see, the educated guesses we've been making together on this channel, and a lot of people have been making in the community who have been more focused on rarity are looking extremely right, and are looking to probably be even more right over the next year, as some of these sets just have hundreds being graded every month, every week in some cases, whereas other sets have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cards being graded. It's just staggering the difference, and I think that's going to just continue. Those types of trends, I don't think it will change. Looking at the global economy, here's the second question. Looking at the global economy, a lot of indicators seem to point towards a recession, financial crisis coming up soon. With a lot of markets overheating and inflation starting to grow, what effects do you see this having on the Pokemon market in terms of buying and selling opportunities? Is there anything we can learn from the 2007 financial crisis and how the market retraced back then? Lots of lessons to learn. I think we try and cover them on the channel. The importance of not getting caught up in hype, the importance of understanding the psychology of markets and that emotional bubble and mania and what that feels like and all that speculation and how that then turns into these types of crashes and panics and overcorrections. So those are really important lessons to learn from any sort of bubble period, including the 2007, 2008 financial crisis. I don't know. Obviously, I have no idea when, if we're gonna have a big global retrace in stocks and all sorts of things. Obviously, we've seen a pretty big retrace on Bitcoin, on tech stocks, and some of the growth stocks that have been sort of leading the way. These recovery stocks, as people call them, or some of the more safer kind of blue chippy financial type stocks, have recovered, are near all-time highs right now. So just like the Pokemon market, where there are cards near or at their all-time highs right this second, even as people are saying everything is going to crap, the same thing is true in the stock market. Often people who say things are collapsing in any market, it's because they're really only watching one part of that market. It's rare that everything falls across an entire market all at the same time. It does happen. Generally, when things are really red and really bad, that's the type of market you might see. And we might, I think we're there's some of that in the Pokemon market right now, that people are a little bit hesitant to pay all-time highs, even for parts of the market that are a little bit more hot now, a little bit more hesitant than they were certainly a few months ago. I think the key lesson is and this was what I was trying to say in that "Are you worried?" video, was just like, you have to prepare. It's about first of all, it's emotional and psychological. It's mental preparation to be able to handle ups and downs of markets, and you view this as practice, where you're practicing kind of riding these waves and experiencing these waves. And then you also have to put yourself in situations where you can hold, and then holding doesn't bankrupt you, it doesn't destroy you, and you can put yourself in a situation where you also don't need the market ever to recover. And that's that dangerous sort of thing. So, of course, in the United States, if you have been investing in the S&P 500, after every crash, it recovered. But sometimes things crash and they don't recover, or they don't recover fully, or it takes an extremely long time to recover. There are no guarantees in investing. There are no promises in anything. Do I think that the Pokemon market will be resilient and recover, and a lot of the items we talk about on this channel, those higher end items, will be at all-time highs again at some point in the future? I think it's very likely, based on just rationality and reason. But if this market was just way, way, way too high, and this was a weird sort of fad, once in a lifetime blue moony type, pandemic mixed with stimulus checks, mixed with people at home, all the stuff we've talked about, is it possible that it was just so overinflated that it's going to take such a long time to get back? Or, these are questions that I don't really know the answer to. I think it's part of why I was, just trying to present all of that risk to people early on this channel. And if we look at like the Japanese economy, for example, there are economies where they have bubbles, or they have these in tremendous growth periods. 40 years ago, probably 35, 40 years ago, most of the biggest companies in the world were Japanese, most of the most valuable companies. And then what happened in Japan was they went on, they basically had the bubble burst. And that economy's really struggled. And meanwhile, China and the U.S. and these other economies have soared ahead. And so now when you look at like the top 20 companies in the world, for example, you're going to see mostly U.S. companies now. So you do have to be careful that things don't always recover, and don't always recover as quickly as other things. So this idea that like you just hold and eventually and everything recovers, and every asset, as long as you like hold it long enough, will recover, is not a good strategy. What you want to do is you want to buy things that have good underlying fundamentals that you feel like will recover over time based on real reasons. And so in the Pokemon market, those reasons are going to be multiple generations coming in. So demographic changes, where there's just going to be more demand in the hobby, more people in the hobby. There's going to be the demographic changes in terms of more money in the hobby, because even the individuals who are already here are going to be able to make more and more money. Some of the negatives might be people get bored, people leave, demand goes down for those reasons. this is going to be more of like a fad where it's just a lot of like 30-year-olds coming back for like a short period, and they're not gonna stay and connect to the hobby in the long run. That type of stuff. Kids today aren't really that interested in this. It's more the parents it's more adults that are spurring this on. Kids aren't really getting connected, and there isn't going to be a huge, next generation to continue to think. I don't think those things are going to happen. I think there will be multiple generations in this. I think Pokemon is just going to be bigger and better than ever, is going to make tons of amazing cards, content, video games. It's the biggest pop culture franchise in the world. Like, I think if you're going to bet on any pop culture thing, Pokemon is the thing to bet on in that sort of sense, even if the prices are higher. But you just have to be aware that there are no guarantees. It's all risks. I'm always going to be real with you guys. It's part of why then I would prefer betting on the United States economy, betting on the S&P 500, some of the the biggest companies in the world, than I would bet on Pokemon cards, in terms of safety, in terms of where that risk would be. So it's just, and I'm not a financial advisor, but it's just stuff to keep in mind. These are all the principles I live by. So whatever I tell you guys on this channel, it's how I've been successful so far, and we'll see where it goes. You guys will be able to watch as I try to grow my collection, grow my wealth, hopefully create generational wealth in my family, that sort of stuff, so that I can have a lot of freedom in my life. My kids can have freedom, and we can do lots of charity and good events, good things for the world, the stuff that having a lot of money allows you to do, or having some or enough money, I guess is the way to put it. Okay. Next question. So high-end seems very unachievable, and I have decided to put my money in early to mid-2000s Japanese promos that I truly love, sealed or near-mint copies. What do you think about the potential value of such cards from PSA 7 to PSA 9? Mid-2000s Japanese promos that I truly love. So it's going to depend on the promo, right? There's so many Japanese promos. There's some that I think are undervalued because there aren't that many of them, and they just haven't been talked about enough on YouTube or in other places, and over time they will be discovered and have some of their boom periods, I would guess. There are going to be others that have been talked about a lot already and probably are, overvalued and are probably correcting a little bit now and might continue to correct. In terms of investing long term, generally this is definitely not always true, because sometimes there's one of the things that's said incorrectly is that if you're going to invest, only invest in PSA 10s. Not necessarily true. There are times when 7s, 8s, and 9s, particularly for certain cards, are actually undervalued, and the 10s are overvalued, in my opinion. And I think if you buy the 7, 8s, or 9s, over time, you're actually going to see a greater return because you're paying so much less for those 7s, 8s, and 9s. But in a lot of cases, particularly if you don't really understand how many of those cards are going to come back from PSA, and this type of promo, if it's a fairly niche one, you're not going to have to worry about that many 7s, 8s, and 9s coming back. But if you're doing a set card, Japanese set card, English set card, there's going to be so many 7, 8s, and 9s, and maybe not that many 10s. So the 10s might be undervalued right now because the people look at the pop and they say, well, there aren't that many. There are quite a few 10s compared to 7s, 8s, and 9s. In the future, there might be a ton of 7, 8s, and 9s, but very few 10s. And then that 10 may get more of a premium over the 7, 8s, and 9s and thus do better in the long run. But that isn't always going to be the case. I think saving up money so that you can buy those higher end items is really smart, rather than probably buying a lot of items that are less investable or desirable from a complete financial perspective. But in some cases, there are items that aren't necessarily high end that are going to do better, on a percentage basis. For example, when people were buying the more high end items, I was putting tons and tons of money into Top Zone, into Level X, which I've sold a bunch of now. Once it got around its peak, because I made much more money doing that. I also bought some Japanese trophy cards. Some of my highest end cards have only tripled in value, whereas I made 50x on some of those lower end items, particularly the ones I bought raw and graded myself and then sold. So you can make a lot more money at times buying those really low items where you're only putting a few dollars in, because you can buy a ton of them, you can grade them, and then make those huge markups. But you have to really, really know what you're doing there, and you can lose a lot. And you can, if you're grading them, you can lose a lot of money on those grading fees. And now the grading fees are so much, it becomes a problem. So you really have to know what you're doing. You have to sit down and do the math. At the end of the game, at the end of the day, it's all a math game. And there isn't just like one right answer. To like all the time buy the 10, all the time buy the 7 to 9, all the time buy English, all the time buy Japanese, all the time buy promos, all the time buy set cards. You know, everything has their pluses and minuses, and the skill is trying to weigh all of those out and figure out which one has the most upside with the least downside at any one given time in the market. If you go back and you watch like my top 5 things to invest in like categories to invest in Pokemon, all 5 of those categories are very investable. But the question is, which one is the best investment in any one given time? And that's what you're trying to figure out when you're trying to like time the market in the sense of when to buy and or when to sell. Okay, next question. These are great questions. I think by now we're all expecting some kind of downward market shift in the coming days, months, year, because of the rise in supply of sealed product and graded cards. My question is, when that eventually happens, do you think that most or all Pokemon will see price hits, or will it be concentrated to a specific few overhyped items? I also wanted to know your thoughts on the speculative base Sun and Moon ETB reprints and what that might mean for other potential reprints. Sure. Yeah, so I guess first on that ETB stuff, Pokemon can reprint anything. Nobody knows what they're going to do. They're going to do what's best for them, what's best for the players, what's best for kids. They're not going to cater, on the modern sets, they're not going to cater to the collector secondary market. So just be aware that that's a reality. Okay, so just be careful if you're gonna speculate on those types of items or flip those types of items. So that's been a recurring message that we try and push out on this channel, and lots of channels second that and echo that as well. Particularly from people who have been in the business a little bit and have been through reprints before and have lost money on boxes. The famous Roaring Skies is the one we talked about from a long time ago, but more recently, you know, Vivid Voltage, Hidden Fate, CTBs, reprint. You know, some Evolutions took a little bit of a dip when those Kanto boxes came out. So, you can't predict it, and it's just that inherent risk in investing in that more modern stuff. I don't have any insight into like what's going to be reprinted next. Almost no one does, and the people who do, they don't tell you. I do think listening to channels like Cardinal Gaming, Danny Phantom, you know, two of the best, just to listen. They'll be some of the first, and then going on like Poke Beach, which is phenomenal, Poke Guardian, these types of websites, which are often the first ones out of everyone to publicly, you know, start sharing the information. Sometimes I hear tricklings from certain people that I'm friends with, and I get the information like 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour before someone quickly makes a video on it. The great thing is all that becomes so readily available and accessible to people, but those are the channels I would watch for those information and websites. I would just look out if you're investing in Modern and you just want to be really up to date on what's happening with those reprints, because they're very important. They're going to affect prices. And to your point here, it also can be a signal that they might reprint a lot of other things from that era. You know, so far they haven't gone back to X and Y. Will they reprint ETBs from X and Y era? Who knows? They might, because those sets are very popular. They might. They definitely might not. Who knows? As far as the downward shift, like, do I think it will be concentrated in specific items, or do I think it's going to be broader and more general? I think that usually, if things are very bad, it hits everything, because generally two things happen. One, demand decreases in the whole hobby, and just the whole feeling and vibe of the hobby isn't going to be bringing in as many new people to keep pushing up even the more desirable items in the short term. And you saw that in like the tech crash and the housing market, where there were just people who were like, ooh, maybe not the best time. You know, I was going to buy a house. I was going to, invest in that, but I'm seeing people lose money. Maybe not the best time. I was going to do it. Now I'm not. So you're going to see some of that, and you're going to see that affect the blue chip items, just like the items that are less blue chippy, we can say. So yeah, so let's see. Or will it be concentrated? So I think that the buying opportunities are going to come if everything gets hit. There are going to be certain things that might get hit more than other things, but if everything gets pretty hit, you're going to want to buy those items that are going to be the ones that are probably going to recover, either more quickly or just have a nice high trajectory from where you might buy them at a very low price, versus other items that may stay at those prices for a long time because so much more supply is going to keep coming on the market and keeping it at those prices. I think there's a difference between fear and anxiety causing prices to go down. You want to buy into fear and anxiety. When people are panicking and they're overly negative, those are the items you want to buy. When there's supply and demand fundamentals working against you, those are the items you don't want to buy and sell, because those don't care about your feelings. Those it's just the reality that like there are going to be 10,000 more of that card hitting the market over the next 2 years. How is the market going to absorb 10,000 of that card versus this card over here? There's only going to be 3 that hit the market. It's going to be much easier to absorb those. And so the only reason people are selling that card right now is because they're afraid and anxious, not because the supply and demand fundamentals aren't good about that rarer, more desirable type item, whether it's a modern type promo or a vintage high pop set card or trophy card, etc. So hopefully that stuff makes sense for people. I recently saw Swami, give him a shout out, make a great video about modern on his channel and like what to invest in modern and how to invest in modern. That was exactly right on the money in terms of thinking about also in modern what is actually going to do well, what has done well historically. It's often the things that aren't talked about. It's the more niche, in many cases, Japanese exclusive type promos, type releases. And this is to give TBJ a shout out. This is where Twice Baked Jake I think does a great job of introducing those more niche type, awesome, exclusive-y Japanese type promos to his audience. I'd be careful about buying those specific ones often, because those are the ones that so many people do see, and there are others that are like just as good that he doesn't talk about. But yeah, that's what I would do. Those types of items that Jake often collects and often talks about are those types of like modern Japanese promos, the coolest arts, the smallest, most controlled releases. So for those of you who are familiar with his channel. Okay, next question. Okay, next question is, what specific cards are you currently buying, or what specific cards do you think are currently slept on and undervalued that would be smart to pick up now? So I'm not going to talk about like specific cards here that I'm currently buying or selling. I do mention them here if you listen carefully in my longer kind of rambling statement sometimes, but yeah, so I think my last answer hopefully gives you a broader perspective on the types of things that I look at, the types of things that I would be buying that could be potentially undervalued. Okay, so I recommend going on to places like right now, and there are going to be other websites soon, but places like PokemonPrice.com, where you can check out all the different Japanese promos, do some research. Come back with a specific question to me about like, hey, I looked up Pokepark. What do you think about Pokepark? How many are those reprinted? Like, you can ask me like rarity, like supply side questions, which I can help provide a lot of value around, or potential demand side questions about how much do I think that those items or sets are in demand. But I'm not going to tell you these are the undervalued ones, these are the overvalued ones, just flat out. Okay. We're about teaching men to fish on this channel, not just giving you a fish. I really enjoy the information gathering and analytics side of things, and was hoping you could recommend a few platforms or websites other than the mainstream ones where you can track pop reports and information behind sets. Yeah. So right now, like I track, I'm tracking my own data. We're gonna have some sites and some things to share with you guys eventually, which will help you track your data. Okay, and get a lot of this information from multiple places and have it all in a much more hopefully digestible, easy to use and implement way. Okay. As far as like what's available right now, it's fairly limited, but that will be changing soon, hopefully. Okay, secondly, I have a very limited budget, but would like to build the fund I use for Pokemon cards up to invest more in these amazing nostalgic arts from the WotC era, among other sets. I know some people frown upon flipping modern, but would you recommend this, done in the right way, to build that fund up to chase the higher value cards? Yeah, I mean, most people make the majority of their money in the Pokemon hobby in modern, like the vast majority of their money, because they're getting that product from distributors, they're reselling it at higher amounts, either breaking it on streams, selling it directly to people, or breaking the product open, selling singles, like these types of like they're trying to basically churn at modern all the time. So you're looking to make, 5, 10, 20% if you can. Obviously, in today's market, there were people making 53 times their money on certain items immediately. But historically, you're looking to sell lots and lots of things at sort of like a 5% margin if you can, 5 to 10% margin in terms of how much money you make per sale. And if you can sell lots and lots of those items, you're going to make a lot of money versus just buying a already expensive, more investable item and holding it for the long term, hoping it will go up over time and then you can sell it. That's the difference between being like an investor and running a Pokemon business where you're more looking to constantly buy and sell and flip. And I think that we can define investing by, you could say that flippers are investors. They're just very, very short-term investors or more like day trader investors. It's fine. It's all semantics at the end of the day. But there's an important distinction between value, long-term investors versus people who are flipping, reselling in a short term, churning product to try and make money quickly. Those people care a lot less about the market and more, and even what's going on in the market and what's going to be valuable in the future. You don't have to really think about that. It's more about what's hot right now. What's selling is the most important thing. Liquidity is the most important thing in that game. And I can make videos because I know that game pretty well and I know people who are very successful at it. We can talk more about how to flip and how to be a reseller, but there are already great channels doing that. Go to Z's Flips, James has been doing that for a long time. TCA Gaming, the man is a machine. A lot of these guys, eBirdman, a lot of these guys like have made huge amounts of money, just flipping inventory, multi-million-dollar, many millions of dollars in sales over the last year. Some of these guys like $1 to $10 million of sales on eBay for some of these guys. So they've done it a lot. I can talk about it, but I haven't done. I don't play that game as much. I'm more on that general investing side, which means that I don't have a business where I'm constantly churning and working and doing Pokemon all day every day, buying, selling, flipping, trying to constantly keep that money moving. But what I will say is you don't have to do it full time. You can do it a little bit, and you can certainly make money doing that way. And I think making money that way and then transitioning into that more investment mindset. I think when we look at someone like TCA Gaming, Rusty is a great example of someone, I don't want to speak for him, but who seems to do a combination of both. I mean, I think everything probably has its price, maybe outside of his permanent sort of one of every Charizard collection, one of every card collection that he's working on, PSA 10 collection. But he, I think, realized over time, and has said this to me on our channel, I believe, that he was aware of what items were more scarce and rare, and over time kind of worked to hold those items and was more patient with those, whereas the more common, lower-priced items, he was constantly churning, flipping, putting that money into those rare items and kind of moving up over time, which gets to your question here. I think that's exactly the right way to go if you don't have money. And don't get enough money outside of Pokemon to take and put in the hobby to invest. I think using the hobby to make money and then taking that money, investing is a really smart way, and potentially a really fun way where you learn a lot of different skills to build a valuable collection or to have some valuable investments. Okay. Great. So fantastic questions as always, guys. I see we have 142 people here now. Appreciate you guys watching and hanging out. If you guys can all take a second to like the video for hopefully what was a bunch of useful information, that would be much appreciated. And we will head back into the chat here and start answering some questions for you all. Okay. All right. It took me 46 minutes to get through those. That wasn't too bad. Nice to see a lot of familiar faces. Good to see all of you guys here. Brent says, hey, Jake, what are your feelings on retraces, like on the Mew EX Play PSA 10, down nearly 50%? Is that true? Let's check. I believe you, Bren, but I just want to check to see where it's at. So, turn the Mew EX card. Is that the one that just sold? Did one just sell in the PWCC auction last night? Let me check. Let's see what the last few sales are. Okay, so it looks like last night one sold. There are two that sold for around like 3,600 to 4,000, and that card was selling at its height, it looks like, in March at 6,000 is what I'm seeing here. Did it ever sell higher? So 6,000 to 4, so there were, you know, and it was only 2 sales. Like, here's the thing we have to think about, guys. Like, it was 2 sales. It wasn't like that was selling at those prices for months. It was 2 really high sales. So I would just be careful with, like, it's dropped a huge amount. I mean, $4,000 is a huge amount for that card. That card was going for $400 like a year and a half ago. $400 to $500. I remember SM Pratt. I remember it was going for pretty cheap, and then SM Pratt talked about it, made a video about it, private one, I believe, and then people started buying them up, and it went from. Now those are great cards and frankly deserve the exposure. So, but it just shows that when an influencer who people trust and believe, you know, talks about something, that's the effect it has. As we try to talk about on this channel, you know, that card, I think I got a couple of mine maybe 2.5 years ago at like $200, so $250. So you can see how those cards have outperformed everything basically in a large way. So when you see a card and you know the price history, and you know that how that price was built and how it got up to that really huge price, that's when you're like, huh, like that's a really huge increase. Whereas I have these other set cards over here that maybe only tripled in value, or the Masakis that only like 8x in value, and this card 20x. And you get to see those discrepancies. Now markets are all over the place and irrational, and these can be valued at whatever people are willing to pay. But I just want people to understand like how much these prices are moving all over the place. And just because you see 1 sale or 2 sales go quite a bit lower, I wouldn't even call that like a 50%. It is a 50% retrace from the all-time high, but it's still 10x, more than 10x from like a year ago. You know, or a year, probably now like a year and a half to 2 years ago at this point. So I think that's still a really strong card, really popular, doing well. The fact that 2 of them sold in the same auction for around $4,000. Another one sold May 23rd for $4,300. Those are really strong, right? Those are really strong prices. So, and I think it's a great card. I think the play promos are fantastic and are good cards in the long run. It's part of why I always said there were other cards, right? There are other, like, I know the price history of all these cards, and so I know which ones haven't moved as much, and I know why some have moved and why some haven't moved in a lot of ways. And a lot of it has to do with people talking about them and the narratives that were built around them. Okay, it is what it is. It's the only explanation for why a card was super low valued. A narrative is now created around it. Now it's super valuable. Okay, so you just have to be careful. Got a super chat here from Bo saying, thank you. You're very welcome. Thank you. Thank you for the super chat. Appreciate it. And this is also why there's just a lot of like uneducated opinions being given online right now about like telling you guys like this was the thing you should have bought, or this was the thing you should have bought, or this is where the most money was made. It's like the place where the most money made, nothing in Modern has touched cards like this. Certain, like Top Zone, some of the Level X movement, some of the Black and White movement now. And so when people see retraces on some of these, the retraces on these are like way overdue, right? Like the Top Zone retrace on that Charizard. I mean, that Charizard went up 150 times in value. The fact that that's going for 150,000 or sold in 200,000, that PSA 10 Top Zone Charizard that someone lost like 300K on it or whatever in a couple months, it's still a really huge, amazing price. The fact that that card is still going for like 150 to 200,000 is a humongous increase. So the market is really strong, and there's still a lot of interest, and it's grown tremendously. But that's part of why 4 months ago I was telling people like these prices are crazy, right? Like lunacy, the increases in this short amount of time. Will these cards continue to retrace? It depends on the panic. It depends on how many people are buying these things, collecting them, wanting to hold them, enjoying them. Do I think that card is worth 4,000? It could be. It's a great card. So it's an awesome card. If I had 4,000, I'd rather have that card than $4,000 in terms of my enjoyment. I mean, could you do with that $4,000? Could you do other things in the market? Yes, but this is that type of thing. Like, there aren't that many of those cards potentially. There aren't that many in 10. It's a great looking, cool card. Play promos are some of my favorite cards in the hobby. It's like I get why people are paying that much money for that. And in the long run, those types of cards, like they're just really cool. They're just really, really cool, and there just aren't going to be enough to go around. And when that card is like 40, 30, 40 years old, 50 years old, 80 years old, if Pokemon's around in huge amount of time, we'll be dead by then. But you can think about how these things will age, and why will one age better than the other, and that's the type of stuff I'd be thinking about. Now there are other cards, Bren, that may have retraced 50% that are basically at or around the price that they were a year and a half ago. And like those are the ones that really people have lost on or really poor purchases. Okay, Joshua Epstein Taskle says, "Hey Jake, I have a question. Thoughts on Legendary Collection reverses, particularly the low pop PSA 10s? Underlooked, perhaps." I don't know about underlooked, probably correctly looked. I think that they're fairly niche. I think most people do really like the look and the reverse hollows. There are some people who really don't like them. I think it's cool. I think it's cool they kind of put them all in that set together. I didn't have a problem with it. I like Legendary Collection. Always liked it. I'm much more of a fan of Legendary Collection than base set 2. So that's kind of how I feel about Legendary Collection. And I really, because of those reverse hollows that I really like. So I was always buying those. I don't know what the prices are in them. I haven't bought, I haven't bought any of those in 8 months, probably 9 months now, maybe 10 months. So I don't really know. I don't follow them that closely. I always thought the Mewtwo was by far the most underrated one, because the Mewtwo, it's that Christopher Rush artwork. It's the only other art you can get is that promo. You can't get it in a holo. It's just so cool that they added that in that set. I love the history. I love that card. So that was the only one that I was like, I definitely want that in a 10. The rest are really cool looking, but I didn't feel like I needed as a collector. That one I needed 100% as just a personal collector. Dan Ross says, "Can't wait for a podcast. Perfect when I'm listing or sorting." Me too, man. I love podcasts because I'm all the time listing, sorting, and I love throwing on just card content on the back. It's the best. So I'm glad that I can give you guys some card content to help entertain you, and because I like the same stuff. Palatine Pokemon says, "Hey Jake, what's going on? Did you have your eyes on anything on PWCC last night? I couldn't believe the $3,400 PSA 9 Gold Star Zard." So I didn't. The Gold Star Zards were selling for about $700 to $900, really before things spiked. So that's still, right, we're talking six times, maybe 5 to 6 times in value. Yeah, still like amazing return. So again, it's just knowing those price points, knowing what went up more than other things. There will come a point where that becomes desirable again for me to buy, to get into. So I do think that these retraces are healthy, overdue, normal. I don't think we're heading into a bear. I think we're still in a bull period in Pokemon. I think that Pokemon is really hot. People love Pokemon. There's going to be all sorts of cool sets this year. People are obsessed with this hobby and freaking love it, right? So the hobby is in a great place. It's just that people invested really poor this year, and there's just a ton of mania and a ton of people giving advice who are brand new to other people who are brand new, and they just didn't know the price history of everything, so they didn't understand how quickly the price is built, and it's just unsustainable. It's just way too much. That doesn't mean that we're in some sort of bear period. There may be bear periods in Pokemon where things just like don't sell and there isn't that much interest. Hopefully we won't run into those periods, or that those periods won't be that significant. We're not in that now. We're just in a correction. Too many people, as we kept saying on this channel, too many people were buying to make money and not because they wanted those cards at those values, not because they felt good about those cards at those values. Carlos says, what do you think about first appearance Gen 3 Pokemon with stock image as the artwork, like Gardevoir and Wailord? So I'm not exactly sure what you're saying, like stock images, like they have like very generic, or like their stock generic image as the image on the card. Not sure I understand, apologize. Blitzray says, PWCC was fun last night, especially for us Expedition fans. I saw some like reverse hollows going that I was watching. Oh, and sorry, your initial question was also like, was I looking at anything in PWCC? I actually was like, I was super busy this weekend. I just had like multiple friends visiting, so I just like was hanging out with friends, and I caught like the tail end of the auction last night. I was hanging out in Squeak's Discord a little bit, and we were just talking about how it went and watching a little. We were watching a little backyard baseball, which was fun. One of the guys was playing backyard baseball, and we were just like hanging out and watching him, talking a little shop. But that can also show you my state of mind. Is like I'm not like, oh my god, I need to like, get by all these right now. But I'm watching more carefully now than I was. I can tell you a few months ago when I was like, every price is so ridiculous that I don't even need to watch anymore because I'm not gonna. But nothing is gonna drop anywhere near the prices that I, feel comfortable paying. But now we're, prices are a lot more desirable at these ranges than they were. And I think particularly if you don't have these cards yet and you really want them as a collector, it's completely reasonable to buy these, just knowing that there's a chance that it will retrace further. I bought that Clefable PSA 10 first edition, just as an example of that. I really wanted that for my collection. I'm just not sure how many more PSA 10s are going to come out on the market. It's the rarest jungle first edition PSA 10 card. So I paid for it. And it had dropped over 50% in value, which to me was like, okay, I could have got this card for 1/3 the price if I bought it a year and a half ago, but I didn't, and I felt like it was low enough then. Watsy Fetish says, hey Pokenomics, if you have a card you want and the chances you get another chance to get the card is, let's say, low in the next 5 years, do you buy with premium? If so, how much premium would you consider? Yeah, so I can't give you like exact, but for sure, like, because this hobby isn't just about money for me, right? I really enjoy these cards. It's an experience, and also investing and making money is an experience. Life is about experiences being a good investor and playing the game of making money is an experience, and it can be fun and enjoyable. It can also be addicting and kind of take you over. I think it's about your relationship to money, your relationship to what you're doing. Same with collecting. I love it. It's very fun setting these goals, slowly making progress on my collection goals, finding cards I didn't have before, and particularly for those rare cards that may not come up that much, I would absolutely be open to paying a premium and or paying more than I think I might if another one comes on the market, just as I was saying before, and have done, right, with the Clefable, just because I wanted that card, and I'm here to enjoy myself and for the experience. But you have to be clear with yourself that that's why you're doing it, okay? That's what's important. Dylan Wester says, hey Jake, do you think sealed packs from Diamond and Pearl could have an even lower supply than the EX era? It's been hard lately finding certain sealed Diamond and Pearl. It's possible. I'm not sure. The only thing working against that would be, although there's certainly less pop of the graded cards in those eras, it also was a lot cheaper, so it didn't give the incentive as much, that sort of thing. So it's that sort of that similar argument to grade, because prices were lower. So I think of them as probably fairly comparable, let's say. But I really don't know. Only time will tell. And I don't feel like I'm, I don't feel like anyone is probably, but I'm not someone who's such an expert. I think that I was one of the major buyers, not of sealed, but of graded Diamond and Pearl, and of trying to find the mint cards from that era. And it was difficult to find. But I saw a lot of non-mint cards. I was buying a lot of, played, light play, level EXs. So, I mean, they're a lot of these cards. These were mass-produced items. These were in your Walmart and your Target. These were not, promos, even some modern promos, much, much less than any of these eras. So you do have to be careful. There's a lot more out there that will be graded over the long period. There just may not be a lot left that's sealed. There may not be a lot left that's going to be in very good condition. And there's certainly not certainly, but very unlikely to be a lot of 10s, because even out of pack, not a lot of these cards got 10s. Your average player says, what is your favorite binder set? Ooh. My personal favorite binder set that I have, it changes all the time. So the sets I find myself looking at different sets all the time. Right now I'm on a Yu-Gi-Oh binge, so my favorite, or the one that's giving me the most enjoyment right now, is basically almost every Yu-Gi-Oh set. I'm trying to collect all Yu-Gi-Oh Korean cards because it's fun and cheap. From the GX era to all the original sets too. So I'm having a blast with that. DBZ Score, love that stuff. Middle Earth binders I'm working on. I'm really enjoying that. I'm doing Harry Potter. I'm doing Annie Mayhem. So I collect lots of binders because I'm a collector and love it. In the Pokemon world, love probably the binders I spend my most time looking at these days are my E-Series binders. Probably the E-Series is where I found myself looking. My Expedition, Aquapolis, Skyridge stuff. And let's see what else. I have a lot of work to do left on certain binders, like Legendary Collection, some of the Neos. I never finished my full first edition binder sets, that sort of thing, because I was more focused on getting them in PSA grade. Because I was worried the prices would go up, and I was trying to get the most expensive ones first. Although now it's hard to get near mint first edition cards, ungraded ones for binders. So for anything like that is cheap, I think a lot of those things are overpriced relative to the PSA 9s still. So hey Sakari, nice to see ya. Says hey Jake. Hyperwolf says, smack that like button. Thank you, Hyperwolf. Appreciate that. Yes, please take a minute. Help the channel out. Let's see what else we got here. PokeJohn says, I feel that wasn't a reprint. This is talking about the ETBs. It was more of a reallocation of Sun and Moon booster packs they had left over and didn't want to keep putting in Sword and Shield products. Just a guess, though. Yeah, I have no idea. PokeGeek Dom says, Jake, stocks are being hit, crypto is being hit, and now collectibles are contracting. Is this more a reaction to the general economic outlook, or are collectibles contracting neutrally? So, like, I'll tell you, my stock portfolio is at an all-time high, which probably gives you a sense of the types of stocks and the types of things I own. So, or like right at an all-time high. I don't own crypto, and I don't own a lot of, like, I do own a few S&P 500 type tech stocks, but I don't own any like ARK Invest type stocks. So it's been a strong period for me of growth this year. And even my collectibles, like, I'm doing well. Like, most of my collectibles are retaining the value. I have a number of cards that are at or near all-time highs, and a number of my other cards have only retraced like 20 to 30%. I tend not to own any of the ones that have been retracing like 50, 60, 70%. I own a few, of course, but I sold most of those. So for me, I put myself in a position where I feel like it's going okay. You know, I think that being said, like, people who bought Tesla, for example, and this is really important, people who bought Tesla like at like 200, 150 or whatever it was at, you know, just because it's down to 600 now or 650 or 700, whatever it is, any given day it stock's going up like 5 down, or like they've done amazingly well just because it's retraced a huge amount. Like, they've outperformed me for sure in the last year. So you have to be very clear. But it's been a correction period, and I think that those types of stocks are just highly risky and speculative. And sorry, I'm going off on a tangent here. Let's see what your question is. Is this more of a reaction to general economic outlook, or are collectibles contracting naturally? Yeah, so I think we're seeing corrections on the most speculative items, the items that people are buying, and they're only buying them. They're not really buying them for their fundamentals. They're buying them because other people are buying them. They're buying them because they were the hype things, the momentum things, the things that had the most attention, the things that everyone was talking about online, like pushing other people to buy. You know, and I would put Pokemon in that category. I think Pokemon, crypto were very talked about very similarly. I think it's why there were a lot of crypto people in Pokemon, a lot of Pokemon people in crypto. You know, certain parts of this market. And I don't have anything. Let's put it this way. I don't have it like if you have been successful and are successful investing in that sort of like hype driven momentum investing, like, all the power to you. I just think it's inevitable to get hit with these types of retraces and periods. That being said, right, if you bought in at the right time, you are crushing it right now. Like, still, right? I mean, you 4x your money on Tesla, which is incredible in a year, to 4x your money on a company that big. So you've done amazing. But if you bought in at the height or near the height, you've gotten absolutely crushed. And it's going to be much harder for it to get back up now, because that momentum has left it. You know, once a bubble bursts, it's much more difficult for it to get back to that height again, particularly if it bursts and goes down pretty far, because a lot of the fear, the panic, and the negativity has set in. And there are a certain amount of investors that don't invest at all on fundamentals. They just invest on the thing that someone says they're going to make a lot of money on, and things that have no fear and no anxiety and no downside and no risk. Like, those things actually exist. And when something bursts or the bubble happens, those types of investors, which are the worst types of investors, they're the ones who get slaughtered. When we say pigs get slaughtered, you know, bears make money, bulls make money, pigs get slaughtered. That's where that comes from. It's the type of psychological investors who jump on fads, who jump on trends, that tend to get hit the worst. So I guess I'm responding to your comment that way because we just have to be careful with, like, what is going up, how much money people have actually made, how amazing of a year this has been for certain people, how much other people have lost money. I think that certainly collectibles need to contract, and they're way overvalued, and there are just way too many people speculating on them trying to make money, and that was going to end, and there was going to be a natural retrace. As far as, like, the market changing in any fundamental way, I'm not really sure. I think people are probably overreacting right now in a negative way. I think things are probably not nearly as bad in Pokemon as people feel and think. I think we're still in a bull period in Pokemon, as I said earlier on. I think people still love it. It's a huge hobby. People are super engaged. So that's my opinion. We'll see how everything goes. Smitty Werman says, Jake, PwC was rough from a seller standpoint on a majority of slabs. Do you see things getting worse from a seller standpoint as more and more slabs are returned from PSA, CGC, BGS in the short term? Yeah, I mean, I'm sure. The thing is that this is a really important thing to understand, guys. Really important point. A lot of what's being sold right now is from businesses and from resellers. And these guys they don't care if they take losses, a lot of them. They just want to get out, they won't throw good money after bad. They just want to get out of these items because the market's going down on a lot of them. They know a lot more is coming back. They've already made a humongous killing this year from flipping these and selling these, like millions of dollars, a lot of these bigger businesses. So they just want to get their money out. So they don't care if they throw them all on PWCC and tank the market for a specific card. They don't care about you as this collector who collector investor who has one of that card and is frustrated that 10 are being thrown up on PWCC, and you would never sell your investment that way. You'd be much more cautious and careful. Okay, so that's the problem of owning items that are not in collectors' hands and items that are mass produced and can be bought up by businesses, graded in mass, and then sold in mass. That's why you're going to see a lot of these Shining Fates cards, Hidden Fates cards, Evolution cards get destroyed in value. The PSA ones, because these businesses are going to just throw them out there. They're going to list them all. They're going to try to get out from them as quickly as possible, get their money back as quickly as possible, move on to the next thing. And that's not the best thing for those prices. It creates a buyer's market, okay? Whereas the items like the Play Promo Mew EX that we talked about, that is going to be in more patient hands. And as people see those price dips, you're going to see most collectors say, I'm not going to sell anymore. I might have sold, but I like this item. I'm not going to panic sell, right? I don't need my money back right away. I'm not a business. So those items are probably not going to retrace like those more mass-produced items, more modern items that businesses are churning out and grading hundreds at a time to try and just make $5, $10 a slab. Okay, really important, guys. Really important to understand if you're investing or flipping. A lot of people talking about PokePark. That's funny. Yugioh, Yugi Boy UK says, hey Jake, greetings from the UK. Hey there, nice to see you. DBS is releasing a archive set, which covers the 1 through 9 sets of DBS. Cool. Do you see this being popular, as many of the original secret rares, i.e. are crazy expensive now? Yeah, sounds like it'd be fun. I'll definitely check that out. Thank you for the tip. Sounds like a lot of fun. I would be interested in that. I think those things are great though for the hobby because it allows a cheaper option for people to get introduced to those types of things. I think as long as they differentiate enough, it doesn't necessarily kill the value of the originals. It just allows people to get more connected to them, allows newer people in the hobby who have maybe missed those cards to build a relationship with those cards and then eventually want the original. It's why those reprint sets can be very good for the hobby if they're understood as cheap, enjoyable reprints, not as investment sets themselves, or about the same thing, or, that sort of thing. So that'll be fun, Yugi Boy. I'll definitely check that out. Mark M says, how do you see the changes to eBay, PayPal tax reporting changing the hobby? If people are working on slim margins, would that make certain types of hustles not feasible? Yes, absolutely, Mark, it will. We're going to have to see. Yeah, I don't have too much to add on it. Yes. Bo Sutherland says, what's the easiest way to check how many cards from a set are being graded weekly/monthly by PSA? So I track that data. I have that data with a couple of other guys. Eventually, hopefully, that will be something that more people will be able to use and see. Right now, the best way to track it is manually on the PokemonPrice.com, and it's rough unless you're scraping the data yourself. Okay. Aiden M says, "Hey Jake, I know yours and Z and G's opinion on base set. Just wondering your thoughts are on the future of shadowless." So I absolutely love shadowless from a collector's perspective. I'm obsessed with shadowless. Shadowless to me was always the most undervalued of the three because I get so much enjoyment from shadowless, and I basically like shadowless as much as first edition. But that's very subjective. And just like how much cheaper it was than first edition, and the fact that like it was even harder to get the 10s and in some cases the 9s. Made it very desirable for me. That being said, like there's a lot of shadowless still being graded out there. There's a lot of first editions still yet to be graded, and there's a lot more shadowless. Now we're not talking like the PSA 10s. PSA 10s are really hard to get, okay? But we're talking like 6s, 7s, 8s. Can be a lot more. I don't know how that will all be absorbed from a financial perspective. From a personal perspective, though, Aiden, freaking love them. I'm holding a lot of mine. I don't care if they go down. I love them. It's not all rational here. It's not all about money. There's a reason why I don't talk up certain cards, even though I have a ton of them, and it's because I own a ton of certain cards because I love them and enjoy them, not because I don't think that they're good investments, you know? I think people who watch this channel and don't really understand where I'm coming from here often think that because I talk negatively about something as an investment perspective means I don't love it or I don't enjoy it, and that's completely wrong. I have so many things that I think are stupid buys financially that bring me a lot of joy, so they're brilliant buys. They're extremely smart buys. Okay? So you can break those things up, and when I talk about modern, when I talk about a lot of things modern that I really, really enjoy, I'm just concerned about that investment side for people, not the collectability side or the enjoyment side. Jeremy Judkin says, "Do you think Pokemon still has plans for something big this year for the 25th that hasn't been announced yet?" Yeah, I think they'll definitely do some sort of probably really cool specialty product from Japan. That's what I'm kind of interested to see what they do. Some sort of cool collector's box. I'll definitely be interested in picking those up if I can, if they're not too pricey. Bren says, going back to Bren's earlier question about the Mew, he says it went from 6.2 to 5.6 to 5 to 4.3 to 4 to 3.7. It has a constant downtrend. Yeah, for sure. For sure, Bren. It's definitely retraced from. So I didn't know it had all of those sales, but yeah. And I didn't mean to imply in my comment earlier that which I might have, to be fair to you, that like it isn't retracing just because it had a couple of high sales, but the point of all of that is just like this is okay. A couple of things. One, this is still only 5 sales. All right, and I think that in the Pokemon market today, and this isn't a comment necessarily on you, but just in general, like we're way too reactive. Like this is a collector's auction hobby where people who might have bought that card were at dinner that night, right? It's price. People are way too overreacting and saying a market has corrected off of 1, 2, 5, 6, 10 price points, 10 differences. And I get why people do that, but it's a huge mistake. It's a huge mistake. You like the next one could sell for a lot higher. The next one could sell for a lot lower. But like, I hope people understand where I'm coming from that point, and why one bad sale does not mean that's the new price point for the next cards, or why one good sale does not mean that's the new price point. And we're in this comp fever where people, instead of thinking for themselves about what should this card be valued, what am I willing to pay for this, everyone's like, well, what was the last comp? What was the last comp? What was the last comp? And everyone wants to get like a lower, the seller wants to get more than the last comp, the buyer wants to get less than the last comp. And people aren't thinking anymore, right? In a lot of those situations. And listen, comps of course are valuable to try and figure out like what is market, what is fair right now, but like, why did that specific copy? Why did that specific version? Well, that specific copy had a little bit of damage there. That specific copy, was an older cert. That specific copy sold at a weird hour. That specific copy had 2 copies sell at that same time. And it was the exact same thing at the high price points that I kept telling people. It was like the new high price point would be made, and then everyone was like, well, that's the new price point. And the problem is other people make huge mistakes, and I'm going to say like, there's a pretty famous case right now in like the Yu-Gi-Oh community where Steve Aoki bought, so someone shilled up the Yu-Gi-Oh Blue Eyes White Dragon up to $80,000, and then Steve Aoki bought the next one at $80,000, even though before that probably no one was willing to pay over $40,000 for that card or something like that. And the reason that worked is because everyone uses comps these days, and rather than thinking more broadly about maybe one sale doesn't define how a whole market and everyone in a market thinks about a price. Okay. Enough on that point. It just makes me heated that like we don't think more critically. And again, this is nothing to, you're not saying any of this, Bren. So this is not about you. But that people aren't thinking critically about like how easy it is for prices to move like 20 to 30% per sale depending on who's bidding that night, depending on the mood that they're in that night. Right? That's why these hobbies are so crazy, and it's also why putting your items into auction is risky. Is very risky. Basic Trainer says, my feeling is that last fall's prices was due to new crowds, FOMO, and lack of knowledge. Why are we panicking when those prices were artificially inflated and the current prices might be the ceiling? Yeah. I think the people who are panicking, they don't believe in it. They don't believe, well, first of all, panic is normal and fear is normal. But it's short-lived in these cycles, just like the mania and the FOMO, and maybe it really could double and triple. When Guru comes out and says, in 4 months, these prices are going to double, ridiculous nonsense statements. But in that type of mania environment, in hindsight, crazy nonsense statements. When I had really smart people on the channel come in and say, this card's going to be worth this much in a year, it's going to double again, it's going to triple again, it'll probably be worth this much, nonsense statements, but in, because like who the hell knows, could be, but in a mania, it feels like that's really going to happen, and in this type of environment, it feels like it really could just disappear, and people could like all get out of this, and and it's like, it's not, in hindsight, we'll be looking back on any of that fear and being like, well, that was way over bearish, Pokemon's doing great, so trying to keep that even keel, understanding the ebbs and flows of markets is the key. Okay, it's 4:22. We're going to do about 40 more minutes. I'm going to do probably another 10 minute of questions in the middle, and then we'll hop down to the bottom. All right, Super Shade says, hey, Jake, when it comes to grading with BGS, what has been your success rate grading vintage cards? Any black labels? I want to start a small black label collection, but I would like to grade myself. So I have not graded with BGS. I am actually going to send my first pretty large BGS grading submission to them. But I do actually have a decent amount of insight. So with the modern stuff, I've heard about 6%, 6 to 7% from certain people who have graded hundreds and thousands of cards. So it feels very much like the difference between a 9.5 for any one subgrade or a 10 is pretty negligible. And I do own a lot of BGS cards, so I've looked at a lot of BGS cards. And I will say that it can feel very negligible, whereas generally if they give you a 9 on a subgrade, you can the naked eye can easily see that, oh yes, there's definitely nick there is definitely some off centering, etc., whereas sometimes that 9.5 you're like, this looks pretty perfect, it looks like it could have gotten a 10, but it's just very, very tricky. But 6 to 8% only on a lot of those modern cards, and those modern cards are mostly fairly flawless, so usually they find something to give a 9.5 to. Very hard to get all 10s. Versus getting like the pristine 10, which is much easier. Robert Novak says, I was surprised to see Rocket's Entei EX in 10 go for only $850. A card from one of the best and rare sets shouldn't be that low in my opinion. Well, you should have bought it, Robert. No, you might not have the money to spend. Yeah, I mean, I think that is getting to a price that it's just a lot more reasonable to pick it up, It's not one of my favorite ones from that set, I'll be completely honest. The artwork, I way prefer like the Suicune, and the Mewtwo and the Snorlax myself. And the birds, I like all of the birds better than that card. Like, I just don't love the art on that card, just me personally. But it's still Entei, and Entei is a great Pokemon. And $850 is not that much. You know, for a card from an extremely rare set, there are not going to be that many more 10s graded. I agree with you. You know, in terms of that price history that we talk about, let me see, I don't know if I can remember offhand exactly what that was going for. Couple hundred, maybe 200-300, you know. So there's an example of a card that's now only maybe 2 to 3 times the value it once was, rather than still 5 to 6 times. So yeah, as far as getting super shit, as far as getting like a black label for anything WotC, super hard, like crazy hard. You know, possible, you know, you can get pristines on occasion for really perfect looking cards, but it's so hard. All right, let's do like one more from the middle here, and then I want to see what you guys are saying at the bottom. I'm just looking for a question here. So William Brown has another question on EX Rocket Returns. So he says, "Hi Jake, do you have any thoughts on EX Team Rocket Returns? I think some of the uncommons and rares have some of the best artworks in the game, and the reverse holos of the cards look amazing." Absolutely. That coupled with the EXs and Gold Stars make for it a top 5 all-time set. Do you think if there were a set from the EX era to pop off, would you put your money on EX Team Rocket? Yeah, so I think that EX Team Rocket, so the gold stars from EX Team Rocket are not going to be your most popular gold stars. Now, Torchic is the lowest pop gold star, so that has always been a very expensive card because of that. To get it in PSA 10, it's the hardest one to get. And the Mudkip and the Trico are also very low pop, you know, valuable cards. They are the starters, but for some reason those cards have never been the most popular gold stars. Those are just not the most popular starters, at least as of now. Could they become more popular in the future with like more people who grew up with Gen 3? Getting more, you know, getting older, getting more money? Absolutely. Be interested to see how all that works. As far as like being a top 5 set or like maybe the best set from the EX era, definitely a strong contender. Great set. I completely agree with your first point in particular about the uncommons and commons, and some of the rares too, like the rare like dark Pokemon. Some of those cards are really cool, and I really like the EX Team Rocket symbol. So getting the reverse holos and having that EX Team Rocket symbol on a reverse holo is great. The reverse holos from those sets are so much cooler looking, in my opinion, and from that whole era than most reverse holos in Pokemon. I think most reverse holos don't look very good in Pokemon at all. To be completely honest. So I think the fact that those look really good, you know, those in like the Legendary Collection, you know, that era reverse holo and the Legendary Collection reverse holos are, you know, very good reverse holos. I think that set is already more expensive, or a lot of those cards are already and have always been more expensive than other cards from other sets, for good reason. So I think a lot of that's already probably appropriately priced in, to be completely honest with you, William Brown. As you would see, those cards, even though those cards have always had a higher pop, not the gold stars, but a lot of the EX cards, for example, and just regular holos, because they were cooler and there was more of a market for them, they have slightly higher pop than some other sets. They were still going for more money because they were so cool. People really like that set. Parker Kish says, "Please tell me you have an opinion on the potential AMC short squeeze." No, I have no opinion on AMC. It's ridiculous, but it's the type of thing. It's like, do what makes you happy. Like it's hilarious, you know. If people want to invest that way, they can invest that way. Okay, I'm gonna head to the bottom of the chat just to see what you guys are talking about down here. GeorgeBot says, when you were talking about the Play Promo Mew EX earlier, what website were you looking at? I just quickly looked at eBay. Just eBay sold listing, just to grab a couple of them. John Pokemon says, "Hey Jake, biggest surprises of the last PWCC auction." So I have to go through it still, because as I said earlier, I was had some friends visiting this weekend, so we hung out, and tonight I got my Celtics game, and then I got some work to do, so I haven't had a chance to dig into the numbers like I always try to do. But I did get a quick overview from Squeaks and a couple of guys in his Discord, just on some of the highlights and the general impression that they got from things. So, but I'm gonna kind of go into it a little bit more. So I can get back to you, John, on like what the biggest surprises were in that, or. So feel free, guys, because I'm going to head to the bottom of the chat here. If you guys want to ask a question at the bottom, I'll start answering those. Let's see what else we got here. LPEC says, do you think that grading with PSA has an advantage over grading with BGS as PSA is more well-recognized? Yeah, I mean, it clearly does price-wise right now. The only time that isn't true is if you can get a 9.5 over a 9. So sometimes, cracking a PSA 9 case, sending it to BGS to get that 9.5 is going to make you money. Then taking that 9.5, cracking it, sending it back to PSA, getting that 10, that'll make you money. But generally speaking, right, we've got Black Label at the top. This is excluding CGC. We've got Black Label at the top. Then we've got BGS Pristine 10. We can see that Yugioh First Edition BGS Pristine 10 from Neogen did extremely well. So set an all-time high price. That was an amazing price. Whew. It's a lot of money. So that card, right, went, and then you have the then you have PSA 10s, then you have BGS 9.5s, then you have PSA 9s, then you have BGS 9s, then you have PSA 8.5s, then you have BGS 8.5s, etc., etc., etc. Generally, when you get out of even BGS 9s can be quite weak because some of those 8.5 subgrades can get real wonky at BGS. Whereas like 9.5s from BGS are generally the very strong cards. There are a lot of BGS 9.5s that have good chances at 10s in PSA. Definitely generally prefer PSA 9s over BGS 9s. But again, buy the card, not the grade. Over time, that will matter more. But in the short term, particularly if you're a seller and a reseller, to answer your question directly, got to go PSA for the most part. I still think that. Now, that isn't true with the weight line and all this sort of stuff. That's only advice in the sense that if everything had equal wait times and equal prices, you go PSA right now, in my opinion. But because that isn't the reality, that's why so many people are sending to CGC, for example, or BGS, in my opinion, and so many businesses are. And if they get too swamped and or PSA starts to get their backlog back and they start grading again, it'll be interesting to see if that shifts back to PSA. I think it will. Basic Trainer says, Jake, would you rather have sealed WotC boxes or trophy cards with today's same value, like the number 3 trainer from last night at PWCC that went for 15.5K? So personally, as a collector, I'd much, much rather have the number 3 trainer. That isn't going to be true for everyone because some people might have no connection to that number 3 trainer, whereas having like that vintage box is really meaningful and valuable to them. I've always felt that vintage booster boxes were just way overvalued for me as a collector. I would much rather have the PSA 10 of my favorite card from that set or a complete PSA 10 first edition versions of those cards that I can actually look at and see the card, and then just have like an empty box or just a few of the the different pack arts, just single packs. I would much rather have like a graded pack, one of each graded pack art, or one of just like each of those loose, than necessarily paying up for that whole box. Just because I know how hard it is to get 10s, and it's very unlikely that those 10s will be in there, and I'm never going to open it. That being said, I still like and would love to own one of every first edition box. It's just if I could choose, I would definitely take that absolute rarity of that trophy card, or the rarity of even having just like those PSA 10 first edition. And that's why I have those. But for everyone, you have to collect what you like and what you get. As far as what I think the market is going to value, I think there are good cases to be made for why boxes will be more valuable. I think there are good cases to be made for why PSA cards will be more valuable. The main one for boxes being that there's going to be less and less of them over time as more of them get opened. The main one for the PSA ones is that we actually know how many there are. There are a far, far fewer right now PSA 10 first editions, holos of a lot of these cards than there are first edition boxes left. There are way more first edition boxes left, and it's just very expensive. If you want that PSA 10 first edition card, you kind of have to buy one of the ones that are already graded. You're not going to like open boxes and try and find one and grade one. That's going to cost you $1 million more. So that's why I think that people actually underestimate in a lot of cases the value of those PSA 10 first edition cards. And I think particularly for those really low pop ones, we're going to see during like the next bubble in Pokemon, whenever that is, that those cards are probably going to outpace the boxes. That would be my guess. But we'll see. We'll see. They'll certainly will work in tandem. You know, the prices of the boxes are definitely tied to the price of the cards. I do think, though, that, like, for example, sealed modern or sealed, anything sealed where the inside, the value, the expected value of the cards inside is way lower than the sealed, I would much rather own the sealed, because the sealed does give you that experience. The sealed is an item, you know, the opening experience, which provides value. The sealed gives you that, is sort of its own rare item in and of itself, because there's only so many of that box sealed versus there's tons of it open. There are tons of the open mass-produced cards. So I think there, I much more get the case for sealed. So if I was going to invest in evolutions or invest in Hidden Fates or Shining Legends or one of these popular modern sets, I would definitely go the sealed route there, 100% over any of. I definitely go sealed. Okay, it's a great question, Basic Trainer. Hey Jake, question. PSA 10 first edition commons in base set. Still too big a chance they will get flooded. Was thinking about grabbing some of the first cards I ever got back in the day. Oh, yeah. So those have been graded a lot for a long time. A lot of the big players who had like huge amounts of them have graded them. A lot of those cards that were graded were actually graded by just like a few people, you know. So I don't know how many more of those are mint out there. Probably not tons more. I will say that I'm still sending out PSA 9. I'm still getting back PSA 10, PSA 9 first edition base set cards from PSA. So certainly more of them are coming in the pop. And I'm not, you know, I'm probably, I think of myself as probably having a top 100 collection in the world, but probably not top 50. You know, definitely not top 20. So, and a lot of these guys have tons and tons of raw stuff. So, will they ever grade it? Will they ever sell it? Those are different types of questions. Those are good buys. They're great cards. I do think that the starters got particularly overpriced. I think that the rares, these are just my personal opinions, and I normally don't say these things this overtly. I think the rares are undervalued. I think the rares have always been undervalued. It's really hard to get them. You have to get a base set, first edition base set pack. You only get one per pack. Those packs are worth a fortune. There's no guarantee it's a 10, and yet the 10 is costing you so much less for a lot of those cards. Then, you know, I saw like for example, like I'm gonna say the Doug Trio. Like that Doug Trio has always lagged behind everything else in Pokemon. That Doug Trio in PSA 10 first edition 4 years ago was selling for like $500 to $600. You know what it's selling for now? Last night at PWCC auction, $800. So that means in 2016, people were buying that card for $500, and it's still only $800. It's a crazy bad return, right? Whereas like most things that you would have bought in 2016. Although there was a retrace after 2016, and particularly for base set first edition, saw a pretty big retrace on a card like that. It just goes to show you how having that price history and that price memory can show you what's been so undervalued. Now, why has that been so undervalued? Well, likely because it's just people see Doug Trio and they say that's a lot of money to pay for Doug Trio, whereas they see Charmander and they're like, I love Charmander, even though there's so many more of those. I see Doug Trio and I think, I love Doug Trio. I remember catching him. He was my first like level 20-something catch that I caught with a great ball. You know, it's a rare from base set. It's the first ever card of that card. Freaking awesome card, you know. So I think Professor Oak. I've always said that the Professor Oak card is so undervalued. So there's a lot of things that I feel like are undervalued relative to other things. In general, is it a good time to buy first edition base set? Meh. It's fine. I think if you really want it, it's fine. I think you just have to be prepared for it to lose another 30%, 40%, maybe even 50% certain cards. I don't know. I really don't know. I can't time the market. No one can time the market. We could be at the bottom for now. You know, things could pick back up. You just never know. You just never know how many are going to come onto the market. Like if next month, the PWCC auction, there's like a lot less on the market all of a sudden, you're going to see that feeling in the market shift and change. And then there's going to be a total, then you might see like people who are like, who really want to buy like you. Because I think there are a number of people who really want to buy right now who like are just waiting for the bottom. And if they suddenly feel that the bottom is happening, you might see a pretty quick, you know, movement back up on some of these. Because I think we're still in a bull market overall. This is just sort of a retrace from a bit of that bubble mania. So you just have to be aware that that's always possible, and that's the danger of trying to time things, is that there are a lot of people doing the exact same thing, and so some of you will be successful, some of you won't be. Yep, Usabia says Trio was a powerhouse in the game. Yep, got that dig move. Such a powerhouse when you first get it. Greyface No Space says love Doug Trio. Good, some Doug Trio love. That's what I like to see. All right, guys, we got 20 more minutes for today's live stream. See, we got about 160 some people in the chat. If you guys can take a second to like the video, if you have not, would appreciate it. Pokesmitty says, what's your take on Korean Yu-Gi-Oh? My take on Korean Yu-Gi-Oh is that it's amazingly fun. I'm building out binder sets for it. In terms of like of an investment or value, there's so much of it, and it gets reprinted constantly. Now, my understanding of Korean Yu-Gi-Oh, if you really want the high level conversation, is that they do stop printing certain sets, and it seems to be like a bit random, or like no one knows exactly when. So if they stop printing like Korean Yu-Gi-Oh sets, they don't do any more reprints, I would expect that those boxes to suddenly go from like $20 each to potentially $50 each. Okay, to potentially $100 each for the more desirable ones, like very quickly. And we've seen that movement on Korean Yu-Gi-Oh in certain boxes that went out of print, such as like, off the top of my head, like Pharaoh's Servant, for example, is like $60, $70, $80 a box. You know, so if a even more popular set, like let's take like Metal Raiders or Magician's Force maybe, or you know, were to do that, you know, then you might see, or LOB potentially, even though there's so much LOB, you might see that go up to that 50, 100, and that's probably purely because it's so fun to open and enjoyable to open, and it's worth the money just to open, versus like that you're opening it to like get the cards inside. Now, I will tell you that I don't know who's buying those Korean Yu-Gi-Oh cards, but like there are a few that do sell, and I've seen some like people grade like PSA 10 LOB Blue Eyes, and they like for $600 I saw like a PSA 10 go for. And if that's like, if you could actually sell those consistently at PSA 10, you could open up every Korean Yu-Gi-Oh box, send out all of the Blue Eyes, get like back a certain number of 10s, sell those, and you would definitely make a profit. Now the issue is there probably aren't too many people buying those, and who knows what price they'd actually buy them for. And that 600 could have been not a real purchase or a one-off. Right, so yeah, I wouldn't create a business out of it, but it's really fun. I highly recommend it for enjoyment purposes, okay? For enjoyment purposes. That's why I'm doing it. And I'm opening it, right? I'm not keeping it sealed as a value play, although I do know some people who are, okay? Blitzray says, finished college and opened my last 2 Heart Gold Soul Silver packs to celebrate, and pulled a Suicune Legend card. That's awesome, man. Congratulations. That's so exciting. Those cards are so cool. That's awesome, man. Well, congratulations on graduating. That's a big accomplishment. Big accomplishment. Sakari says, I would pick a trophy card over any box any day. I feel ya. Smitty Worman says, Jake, do you think early EX era as a whole is the most undervalued era in the English TCG? WotC gets a lot of love, but Nintendo's first set seems kind of important too. It's also shout out for being the canary in the coal mine for so long, my man. Yeah, I think that it's probably so, I think you could probably tell on this channel, as I was trying to say without saying, that I was saying that like Team Rocket, the gyms, Fossil, and also Jungle to a little bit lesser extent were overvalued, and the undervalued sets and Base Set First Edition and certainly Base Set Unlimited was overvalued. And Base Set Unlimited, I was saying, was insanely overvalued, right? But these other ones I was kind of hinting, I'm saying these are overvalued compared to like the Neos, E-Series, and the original Nintendo EX era. So I wouldn't say the original Nintendo EX era is undervalued compared to the Neos or compared to E-Series. Interestingly, now that I'm tracking the pop reports, E-Series is also very, very few graded. So there are more Neos being graded, not necessarily 10s or 9s. They're because it's harder to grade Neo versus E-Series. It's easier to get 10s fresh from pack. But there are very few just in general E-Series cards being graded. There are very few, and there are very few Nintendo original EX era cards, and there are very few Diamond and Pearl era cards. So those are the three eras right now that I'm seeing the least graded just in the last few weeks that I'm watching. Will that change? It might. There's a little bit more Neo, and there's a lot more Fossil, Rocket, Gyms, and Jungle, and even a lot more Base Set Unlimited and more Base Set First Edition, but less Base Set First Edition than some of these others. In part because Base Set First Edition, a lot of it had already been graded. So hopefully that gives you a good overview. I personally love E-Series. It's not first appearances of Pokemon. I'm not sure how that will age. I just think the artwork is so freaking cool, and there just seem to not be a lot of it out there. So, like I have cards that, like I own, a few of a certain card that's, for example, has only 15 PSA 10s in the world. I own one that, 26 PSA 10s in the world, and there were only 26 2 years ago. So there hasn't been a single one added in 2 years, right? There's no other cards in WotC that I think have that outside of maybe like Legendary Collection Blastoise or like Doug Trio from Expedition, but that's another E-Series. So yeah. Now there's a bunch of Neo cards that have only had like one or two added, or so it's. Let's see what else we got here. Great questions as always, guys. Pokeli99 says, how do you feel about graded packs? Okay, so here's my feeling about graded packs. Now that they've changed the design, I have to say I'm a fan of graded packs. The problem with graded packs is the price point. The price point is way too high on graded packs because they're all light packs, and it's not that hard to grade packs. I like the way they look, but the prices are crazy right now. And I think part of why the prices are so crazy is, one, they look really cool. People really do want to collect them. But two, and maybe this is for Pat. Someone can send this message out to Pat. I should give Pat this spiel, right? Because Pat Flynn is like trying to be the collector of these. Two, what's really important with it is that, so they're light packs. It's much cheaper just to buy a box, and like now you'd have to spend a lot of money in the box, but then you could like sell the heavy packs, grade the light packs, like a much cheaper way of getting it. Now, part of why it might be so expensive is because people really want them and they're just not willing to wait because it takes so long to get those back from PSA. So that's that, right? So that's, and they're expensive to grade. But when you sit down and you do, like, and I sat down and looked at the prices, it's crazy how much they're going for and the premium that you're getting from what is almost assuredly a light pack, because it would be pretty foolish to not weigh your pack before sending it in to make sure it doesn't contain a holo. So that's my feeling on them. As far as a collector, I really like them. I plan on, when the market, I think, corrects around them eventually, I do plan on picking some up because I think that they're really cool. I also have packs that eventually I will grade. I have like mint, fresh from box, like Fossil packs, things like that, base set pack, that eventually I'll probably grade. Thrifty TCG says new graded packs good, old ones nah. Yeah, exactly. Sakari says, in a video I released today, I talked about how I think the time Sword and Shield sets get reprinted will also be around the same time those cards will start coming back from PSA, possibly causing a crash in these cards. Thoughts on this theory? Yeah, I mean, the thing about Modern 2 is that, like, most of these things people aren't going to be interested in a year, or a year and a half, or 2 years. It's only the most popular sets. Like, most people are just going to move on to the cool new set, right? Now it's like Eevee Heroes. There's going to be, like, another new set after that. There's going to, you know, and another one, and another one, and another one that are all really cool because Pokemon's doing an amazing job. And because of that, not only is there going to be tons of supply coming back from these sets, but interest will have moved on from these sets, and they're going to do reprints on these sets. So it's going to destroy it, right? It's going to destroy it. And so what I would tell you is if you want to invest in these sets, buy sealed product at retail and hold the sealed product, because the sealed product will at least have that value of being opened. And one day, very likely, kids will pay you, and or adults who revisit that time period will pay you some premium, a few $100s for that premium of opening, okay? What's happening now with booster box prices is insane, though. People are paying booster box prices now for $200, $300, $400 because they think one day it's going to be a $5,000 box. I don't see a path to that. But you know, you never know. Now the actual cards, like the ungraded and the graded cards, those are really going to be, it's going to be rough. There's going to be so many. So I agree with you, Sakari. Sakari says, side note, for Korean Yu-Gi-Oh! From the boxes I open, I notice a lot of factory issues with the cards that leads me to think a PSA 10 is almost impossible. So I opened a ton of Korean Yu-Gi-Oh! And a lot of it looked pretty good. I could be missing something, but yeah. A lot of it looked pretty good. Now, the GX eras, if you're opening the GX eras in general had lots of printing issues. But I think I have a couple, like I think I opened about 15 boxes of LOB and I got like maybe 5 or 6 Legends of 5 or 6 Blue Eyes, and I think 2 of them or 3 of them look like pretty strong 10s. But I don't know. I might send them out. I probably won't because I think it's kind of ridiculous. And I like them in binders, so. Okay. Basic Trainer says, but the fact that every single starter, and I think we're talking about first edition bases, under 999 in pop still today is interesting. Yeah, I mean, these are cards that yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how much it goes up over time. I really, like, I could throw out some guesses. I think if you're guessing there are only going to be 500 more 10s graded ever, I think you're probably wrong. Like, I would definitely take the over. You know, if you said, will there ever be 5,000 of each? I would maybe take the under there, maybe take the over. It's complete and utter speculation on my point. But that's just like where I'm put it. Like, so I have to think like, how are like thousands more of that card in the long run? I think I maybe would take the under, but let's say 3,000. Let's say if there are 2,000 more Charmanders that get graded. So that's at $1,500 or $2,500. What are they going for? Anywhere between $1,500 and $2,500. I'm seeing it fluctuate quite a bit. I think I just saw a really high sale all of a sudden. But, you know, if we get, let's see, so that's, you know, we're talking about millions of dollars, right? To eat up all that supply. I need to be interested in that card, and I think there probably will be. I mean, it's a crucial, important card in the hobby. But how long will that take, and when is the right time to buy? And I think people are buying now with this idea that it's going to be worth a huge amount in the future, rather than just like being patient, waiting, and buying things that are maybe a bit underpriced now, rather than those things that are probably like pretty well priced. But listen, I have a lot of those cards. I love those cards. They also just like make me happy, right? Like I love base set. It's my childhood. Basic Trainer says, Jake, in the past 7 months, base set unlimited starters have not moved in the pop reports. So that's definitely not right. Do you want me to check for you right now? Let's check. Let me pull up my stuff here. Give me 1 second here. Come on. Sorry, guys. Just give me a sec here. Okay, so let's see. So in the last week, there have been for Charmander, there have been 19 new 10s. There have been 24 new 9s. So this is 1 week. 19 new 10s, 24 new 9s. In the last 52 weeks, there have been 242 10s, 358 new 9s. So, whatever. They're a lot, and they're a lot being graded right now every week. And what we're seeing is it's increasing. It's increasing. So that means that like every week right now, like in probably about 6 months, to a year, we might have a doubling of the total amount. So just be careful with the unlimited. Aiden M says, now check the Evolutions Charizard. Yeah, the Evolutions Charizard's crazy. Okay. Brian F says, is there going to be an Evo reprint anytime soon? Nobody knows, Brian. Nobody knows. I bet there's still more product, but I think you're still going to see those packs and other things. Team Trubbish says, oh, you were asking someone else. Adam Sislo says that they saw on a reputable sports card channel that all PSA backlog is now in their system and just needs to be graded and returned. Oh, that's cool. I have no idea if that's true, but if it's from a reputable sports channel, it's an interesting point of data to consider for us. I myself don't trust any. Trust isn't the right word. I believe it when I see it generally, but I'm always absorbing data and I'm interested to hear what reputable people have to say, and I factor it into my best guesses, my educated guesses. Connor Fitzgerald said, I have Shining Fates and BS Master Set. Would it make more sense to hold or sell while the sets are hot? So, financially, so I'm not going to tell you exactly what to do. I think that's a decision you need to make. I think that it's always good to sell when sets are hot, is what I will say. It's always a reasonable time. Now, I think with a set like Shining Fates, because it's connected to Hidden Fates, there's probably some investor potential. There's probably some pretty decent potential that a set like that, as long as Pokemon does well, eventually that those sets will go up in value. Now, because there's so much supply, will the interim be pretty rough and rocky for a set like that? Probably. Okay, but it's a great set. It's connected to Hidden Fates. All those shiny sets are going to be collectible and desirable. So that would be my answer. But is it always a good time to sell while people are still interested? And of course, that's the time to sell, not when people are like focused on something else. People are saying no Evo print. No. So there definitely could be an evolution reprint. So, but there isn't, I have no idea. If I was Pokemon, I would not reprint evolutions. It just would be ridiculous. Maybe you could do like an Evolutions 2. You could do reprint and maybe you put Blastoise and Venusaur in there or something. But Sakari says, I'll quit the hobby if they reprint X and Y sets. You've been invested in those, Sakari? Some sealed X and Y? Adam says that it was in Baseball Card Collector Investor. Oh, I like that guy's channel. That's interesting. Oh, and Nat Turner said it on his Twitter. Oh, cool. Thanks, guys. Thanks for sharing. They've all been entered into the system. Very cool. So who knows what that means in terms of like the amount of time, but it's cool that they've been entered. It doesn't mean that it's not going to take a million years for them to grade them all and actually then exist in our numbers so that we can actually see what they're graded, but it's nice that they've entered them, I guess. Okay, guys, so it's 5 o'clock. We're going to end the stream for today. Such a pleasure hanging out with you all. Again, just a quick recap for those who weren't here earlier in the video. We're going to be starting Patreon next month. We're going to be starting we're doing a Zoom chat with the Patreon members where we're going to be talking Pokemon, and I have a lot of cool plans in the future. We'll see this month we're probably going to try out a few things, but in the future we're going to do breakout rooms and all sorts of things where people are going to be able to interact and talk. That being said, you will never have to turn on your camera or speak at all. You'll never be called on. It'll only if you want to speak will you be able to speak. So if you guys want to do that, sign up for the Patreon. Please do. It's also a great way to support me, support this channel, support the work we're doing here. But don't sign up. I would not sign up today or tomorrow. I would sign up the 1st of next month, because the way Patreon works is you'll be charged twice. If you sign up today, you'll be charged for today and for next month. Whereas if you wait a couple days and sign up for next month, you'll just be charged then. So I hope that makes sense for people. I hope everyone knew that who was signing up for Patreon and had used Patreon before. So thank you all so much for the continued support. You guys are great, and I hope that I'm continuing to be helpful and living up to expectations and will be worthy of all this financial support that recently the channel has started to receive. Really appreciate it. We're up over 100 patrons, and it's amazing. So keep it up. Keep up the support. Thank you all again so much. Take a second to like the video on the way out. And I guess the last thing, starting a new podcast. Just going to repeat the earlier message from the video. We're starting a new podcast. I will link once the video is live. I think it will be live today. I'll link it here. I can link it in the description if you guys want to go check that out. We're going to work to load it on so that you don't have to listen to it on YouTube eventually. I'm not sure exactly what we're going to do. Oh, hey, Pat, last second Pat visit. Hey, Pat. So we're gonna probably have that on Spotify, iTunes, something like that. So people can listen and hang out and not hang out, but listen and enjoy the content while they don't need to be on YouTube, that sort of thing. They can download it. They don't even need internet to listen. So I think that'll be great for people. And I guess that's it. That's it for me today. Thank you all, and talk to you all again soon.